Hello everyone and welcome back inside the UCCU ballpark for the second matchup of bracket play between the 5th seeded Mountain Ridge Sentinels and the 13th seeded Bingham Miners. I'm JT Wistersill, excited to be with you on the call. Our second elimination game of the day after we just saw Riverton take down Syracuse in a thriller. The winner of this game between the Sentinels and Miners advances to the semifinals where Sky Ridge awaits. The Falcons the top seed in our tournament. So we are just about set to get action underway here. Let's give you first the defensive lineup for the Miners. Easton Gunn is the catcher. Dylan Singleton at first. Luke Nelson at second. Stockton Folks at third. Braxton Miller at short. Austin Goodrich in left field. Jackson Reiser in center field with Remington Edwards in right field. And Anderson Decker gets the start on the mound for Mountain Ridge. As for the Miners, the leadoff hitter is Dylan Frank, followed by Jake Wallen. Maddox Peck will bat third, with Cam Beck batting cleanup. Frank, let's strike one through. Abraham Atencio will bat in the 5th spot. Talon Van Sickle batting 6th, followed by Bridger Slade, Blake Schaefer, and Boston Snyder batting 9th. Fouled off by Frank. So Decker already ahead in the count early. Frank in yesterday's game, in which the Miners defeated Pleasant Grove, launched a grand slam. Nearly struck out there, but able to check, and they'll say he did not swing. One, two, the count. Frank, outside of having that grand slam, failed to reach base yesterday. Fouling out, flying out to short, and grounding out. And here it's a drop 3. And they're able to easily get the out on the grand slam man from yesterday on Frank. Jake Wallen now due up. Wallen in yesterday's action flew out to center field in his first at-bat. Flew out to right field in the following one, grounded out to third, and then flew out to left field. The first matchup between the Sentinels and Miners was a 10-3 victory for Mountain Ridge. Sent the Miners into the losers bracket where they took on the 8th-seeded Pleasant Grove Vikings. Pleasant Grove nearly toppled Sky Ridge in one that took 8 innings to resolve, as this one's deflected off the bat. So 0-2 the count once again. Took 8 innings to resolve that one, but the Falcons able to score in the bottom of the 8th to knock off the Vikings. And then Bingham was ready for Pleasant Grove, and they defeated them 10-3 to place themselves in position to take on the Sentinels. This one fouled off, so Wallen doing everything he can to stay alive. Wallen looking to get the first base hit of the day. Anderson Decker off to a hot start for the Sentinels. Their breaking ball chopped. It'll just end up in foul territory. It was very close. As we said, just ends up in foul territory. Sentinels come into this one 19-7 on the season. They were 11-4 in region play. Bingham 15-14, 6-9 in region play. These two Region 3 forces vying for the opportunity to be one of the final 4 teams remaining in the state. One and one the count for Wallen to 2 outs. As he goes down swinging. Technically second strikeout, since the first one was a drop 3. So Wallen strikes out. It's the 5th meeting of the season between these two. It was an incredible game last night that between Sky Ridge and the Sentinels that landed Mountain Ridge in this position. The Sentinels led for most of our action last night, but a late comeback by Sky Ridge ended up being the difference. This one fouled off by Maddox Peck. Peck was sensational on the mound yesterday for Bingham. At the bats in yesterday's game, fouled out in his first plate appearance, then flew out to right field, but landed on base when he launched a line drive into right field and drilled a grounder between second and third. 0-2 the delivery, and Decker started to leak off the mound, thought he had strike 3. 0-2 the count. Pack goes down swinging. 3 straight strikeouts for Anderson Decker. The Miners pitcher locked in on the mound to start it off. Bingham on the defense when we come back on KSL Sports Rewind. The Mountain Ridge Sentinels up to bat in a moment, but first we'll give you the defensive lineup for the Miners. It'll be Boston Snyder at catcher, Cam Beck at first, Talon Van Sickle. Going to be over at second, Jake Wallen over at third, Abraham Atencio at short, Dylan Frank in left field, Maddox Peck in center field, and Blake Schaefer in right field. Dylan Frank over in left field, Maddox Peck in center field, and Blake Schaefer in right field with Porter Lindsay getting the start on the mound for the Miners. Due up to Mountain Ridge is going to be Austin Goodrich, their leadoff hitter. Stockton Folks will follow him. Jackson Reiser will bat in the third spot with Easton Gunn batting cleanup. Luke Nelson batting fifth. Remington Edwards will bat sixth. Luke Nelson will bat seventh. And Dylan Singleton and Braxton Miller round out the order for the Sentinels. Mountain Ridge earned the 5th seed in our tournament. They dismantled Layton in a dominant performance, 23-7, still the most runs we've seen scored in the 6A state championship tournament. Those 23 they poured on the first game against Layton, and then they bested the Lancers 13-3. We already mentioned what they did against Bingham in the first game, 10-3. We'll take a closer look at that game in a little bit. But first, this one's lifted in the left field. Frank waiting on it and makes the grab to retire Goodrich. Goodrich in yesterday's action had 3 walks and grounded out to second, the only time he put the ball in play. Stockton Folks now do up. Folks grounded out to first in his first plate appearance. Then even though he's thrown out at first, he brought in a run after launching an RBI at short, then flew out into right field and brought in another run late in that game after booming one into center right field. So he brought in 2 runs yesterday. Looks to be the first Sentinel to reach base here early. 1-0 the count after the quick out. The outside delivery. 1-1 the count. Folks fouls it back off his leg. Mentioned that thriller we saw in our nightcap last night between Mountain Ridge and Sky Ridge. That one didn't get underway until 9:30, and we went past 12 o'clock to wrap it up. Less than 12 hours after that, a little over 12 hours, after that one finished. The Sentinels already back here. 1-2 the count. Started off scoreless in the first inning, but Sky Ridge added 2 runs in the bottom of the second. Mountain Ridge would add 2 runs, 1 each in the third and fourth, to tie things up going into the 7th. It's fouled back. So we were tied 2-2 going into the final inning. And in the 7th, we saw the Sentinels score 3 runs, so it was a 5-2 advantage heading into the bottom of the 7th. And the 5th-seeded Sentinels seemed poised to upset the top-seeded Sky Ridge Falcons. Porter Lindsay gets the first strikeout of the day as he retires Folks. But as I mentioned, Mountain Ridge led 5-2 heading into that final frame against Sky Ridge, and then the Falcons ended up pouring it on. They score 4 runs in the final one in walk-off fashion to earn the 6-5 victory over the Sentinels, and they punch their ticket to the semifinals. The winner of this game will also play in the semifinals. The loser will be going home. One-0 the count. for Jackson Reiser. Reiser pops this one straight up in the air. It's going to be called for by Jake Wallen, who comes off third to collect it and get Bingham out of the inning. So that will do it. A fast-flying first. We'll be back for the second just as quickly on KSL Sports Rewind. We're set for second inning action here at UCCU Ballpark, Utah Valley University, the home for the 2023 6A Baseball State Championship Tournament. We have 6A covered here, but Dusty Lister has you covered for all the 5A action. That's down at BYU. We also have you covered all across the state. Lacrosse championships going on. You can catch that on KSL Sports Rewind, and the soccer championships also available on KSL Sports Rewind, your home for high school sports. Cam Beck due up. It was Frank Wallen and Peck who were all retired via the strikeout from Decker. This one won't be a strikeout, but it's popped straight up in the air. Calling for it and coming over from short to make the grab. He nearly misplayed it. But Braxton Miller flies all the way over past second base to get the first out of the inning as he quickly retires Cam Beck. Beck had himself quite the first at-bat yesterday after he destroyed a ball into left field, crushing a home run. Grounded out to the pitcher in his second plate appearance, and then Beck reached base on a grounder in his third at-bat before striking out in yesterday's bout against Pleasant Grove. Abraham Atencio, now due up. It'll be Atencio with Talon Van Sickle on deck. 2-0 the count. So we're flying through this game early. The bunt attempt, fielded cleanly. Decker makes the throw over to first, and he's able to beat the Atencio dive attempt. So Beck and Atencio both retired quickly. Atencio in yesterday's action had 2 walks. Atencio and Van Sickle were extremely successful in their combined 8 at-bats. Each of them reached base every time. Atencio had 2 walks, then a grounder they reached safely first on a fielder's choice, and also reached safe on a grounder in his second at-bat via the fielder's choice. As for Talon Van Sickle, he had 2 walks in his first plate appearances, then drove in a run with a monster RBI. He boomed into right field and also launched one to left field in his 4th and final at-bat of the game. 2 outs now, 0-2 the count. The Miners having trouble figuring out Anderson Decker here early. Decker looking to retire Van Sickle. It's a chopper in fair territory, and it lands perfectly in front of Singleton, who scoops it up and taps on first base. So, a blazing fast start to this game as we're already 1-1 innings into it. Top of the second on deck here at UCCU Ballpark. You're watching KSL Sports Rewind. Here in the bottom of the second, where the Sentinels are back up to back, it'll be Easton Gunn, Luke Nelson, and Remington Edwards all due up. We have no hits through the first inning, no walks either. There's 3 strikeouts, and quite the start for Anderson Decker. Could have our first base hit here, as this one's going to land in right field. Gunn with a gash. Gunn picking up where he left off from last night after he drove in a monster RBI. Ripping one into right field. And speaking of driving in runs, that's what Luke Nelson did yesterday, who's now up to bat. Nelson was intentionally walked in his third at-bat, and before that, a strikeout and a walk. Looking to continue looking to build off of the first base hit that Easton Gunn just blasted. Our first base runner of the day on first and gun. Beautiful delivery on the breaking ball by Porter Lindsay. Pickoff attempt to first, going to be unsuccessful. Mentioned this is the 5th meeting on the season between these teams. Before we look at their most recent postseason meeting, let's look how their regular season bouts played out. In the first one, Bingham claimed a 5-2 victory at Mountain Ridge. Ground ball ends up in foul territory. The Miners scored 3 runs in the top of the 4th and 2 more in the top of the 6th. And they held Mountain Ridge scoreless outside the bottom of the 3rd when the Sentinels scored 2 to secure the 5-2 victory. Then Mountain Ridge would travel out to Bingham the following day to play another game. And Mountain Ridge got off to a hot start, scoring 3 runs in the top of the 2nd. They'd add a run in the bottom of the 1st, or excuse me, the top of the 1st, top of the 3rd, scoring 1. And they added a combined 7 runs in the 5th and 6th while holding the Miners to only 1 for the 11-1 Mercy victory after 6. Then in the final bout, Mountain Ridge returned home, and finally a home team would win a game in that series as the Sentinels toppled the Miners 6-5. A line drive just squeezes past the glove of Atencio. And way out in the outfield, it's finally trapped, and it'll be a double for Luke Nelson as he launched one deep into left center field. Gunn over to second now. Nelson to second. Gunn over on third, and Remington Edwards due up. So 2 runners on base, no outs. Lindsay trying to find his rhythm here, but just closing out that last game in the regular season, as I mentioned, Bingham fell to Mountain Ridge after the Sentinels, who trailed early on that game 4-0. They would score 2 runs in the bottom of the 3rd and then a combined 4 runs in the 5th, 6th, and 7th innings to claim the 6-5 victory and the regular season series. Remington Edwards swings on the first pitch, fouling it off. Edwards struck out in his first plate appearance in last night's game against Skyridge, then was retired on a bunt, and also flew out to center field. Edwards looking to turn around his fortune here and drive in the first runs of the day. Still no outs in the inning, but 2 straight strikes after he lets that one pass him by. Lindsay looking for his first K since facing off against Folks, the second batter in the lineup for Mountain Ridge. Edwards fouls it, and it'll be trapped over on first. They're able to get the force out, or just the out, but it scores a run as Mountain Ridge strikes first with Gunn coming home. And while Gunn was able to make it home on the sacrifice single, also able to move into stronger scoring position was Nelson, who's now on third. It was a good job by Cam Beck diving off first to grab it. Lindsay came over to cover first, but still a run scores and another firmly in scoring position. With Austin Ellis now due up, the designated hitter. Ellis hit by that one. That made quite the sound, if you guys could hear that. It sounded like it might have collided with his padding, but either way, Ellis hit by a pitch and heading to base. Ellis reached base via a walk yesterday and also destroyed one in the left field. Returns to the base pads here as Dalen Singleton comes up. Singleton shows bunt but pulls back. So runners on first and third with 1 out. Lindsay tries for another pickoff attempt. Same result, unsuccessful. So Singleton up here with 1 out. Braxton Miller on deck. 1-0 the count. This one's fouled off by Singleton. Currently 1-1 in the count. Singleton had a frustrating night last night. Struck out in all 3 of his plate appearances. Runners on first and third. Big off attempt down to first, unsuccessful. One and one the count. Singleton resets, looking to keep the scoring alive for the Sentinels. Singleton tries for the bunt, fouls it off. Count will go to 2-1. Ellis over on first. Nelson on third. Porter Lindsay looking for the strikeout. Singleton takes the high delivery to even the count at 2. Singleton thought about swinging on it, but pulls back. Full count. I believe it's the first time we've reached that mark for either team so far in the early goings of this one. Singleton looking to avoid his 4th consecutive strikeout. Pickoff attempt over to first, unsuccessful. Full count. And ball 4 delivered. So the bases are loaded with just 1 out as Singleton heads to first. Braxton Miller now due up. Miller had quite the eventful start last night where it originally looked like he launched a home run in left field, and by our vantage point, he did have a home run, but our umpiring and officiating crew all 3 of our umpires came together, talked it over, ruled it a ground rule double. He was driven in shortly after. Then in his second at-bat, he did strike out, but on the drop 3, the throw was bobbled, and it allowed him to make it safely to first, and he brought in a run in the ensuing chaos, but he would strike out in his final plate appearance. But still an eventful day for Miller. Looking to blast another home run with the bases loaded here. He reaches on one, and it'll end up in foul territory, unplayable. Mountain Ridge already with the 1-0 advantage here in the bottom of the second. An opportunity to blow this game open for Braxton Miller. We have had a grand slam. The Miners had that one, as we mentioned earlier. That one squeezes away. Coming home is Nelson, and Nelson easily scores run number 2 for Mountain Ridge. Both base runners advance amidst the chaos there. Still just 1 out. 1-2 the count. Ellis over to third. Singleton at second. Low delivery for ball 2. Evens the count at 2 apiece. No one warming out in the dugout. Bingham led by legendary head coach Joey Soto. Reaching and missing is Braxton Miller. He's the 2nd strikeout of the day for Porter Lindsay. But Coach Sato leads Bingham. 31 years of experience, 430 wins, just 195 career losses. Brock Whitney in his 5th season with Mountain Ridge. 45 career wins, 37 losses, heading into bracket play. A chopper fielded cleanly off the bounce. And able to make the play over to first is Talon Van Sickle. So 2 runners left stranded on by the Sentinels, able to take a 2-0 advantage with the 3rd up next on KSL Sports Rewind. Bridger Slade, Blake Schaefer, and Boston Snyder, the back of the batting order for the Bingham Miners, all due up. Slade, the DH. Thought about swinging on the first pitch, but decided to pull back. Bingham has had no answers here early for the strong defense we've seen. Sentinels continue to look sharp as that one's launched into left field in foul territory. 1-1 the count here. Slade in yesterday's action reached base safely in his first plate appearance off catcher interference. Then he was struck out in his second at-bat. Slade also goes down swinging right there. Did bring in a run in his final plate appearance yesterday, Bridger Slade, but did strike out once. Reached base in his final two plate appearances yesterday, but goes down swinging there. The fourth strikeout through 7 batters faced so far for Anderson Decker. Blake Schaefer now due up. Schaefer in yesterday's action reached base safely off a well-hit grounder in between first and second. Then flew out to center field, struck out, and grounded out to short in his 4 plate appearances against the Falcons. Against the Vikings. 0-2 the count. Strike 3. Schaefer is the second consecutive strikeout, and now the 5th through 8 batters faced here early for Anderson Decker. Snyder finds a strike zone, Decker finds a strike zone against Snyder. Snyder walked in a run last night in his first plate appearance, then flew out to left field and grounded out to short. Strike number 2 right on the money, 2-0 the count. Decker looking for his second consecutive inning, delivering 3 straight strikeouts, his second inning overall, delivering 3 straight strikeouts. We'll have to wait as that one's fouled off. He started the day striking out the first 3 batters in the order for the Miners. He's got 5 strikeouts through his first 8 batters faced. A chance for 6 strikeouts through his first 9 on the delivery. Anderson Decker. Brings the count to 2-2. We'll check that. Actually 1-1. Got a little ahead that time. So 1-1 with 2 outs. Snyder swings low and misses. And I was correct, actually. It was a 2 strikes already. So how about that from Anderson Decker? What a dynamite performance to get things started for the Cavemen defense. He's already got 6 strikeouts through 9 batters faced. And has the Sentinels back on the offensive when we return on KSL Sports Rewind. Bottom of the third about to begin here on KSL Sports Rewind. Bringing you all the coverage this week of the 2023 6A Baseball State Championship Tournament from UCCU Ballpark. Stockton Foles and Jackson Reiser and Easton Gunn all due up. Folks, last time we saw him struck out. Porter Lindsay back on the mound after struggling a little bit in the bottom of the second. The bunt attempt pulled back. Folks in the first game against the Bingham Miners with a walk, flew out to left field, but his third plate appearance drove in 2 runs on a monster shot into center field and a strikeout. 1-1 the count. I'd also like to apologize before we went to break. I believe I said American Fork instead of Mountain Ridge, which I obviously meant. So the Sentinels off to a strong start here. Swing and a miss, 1-2 the count. Folks trying to avoid striking out for the second consecutive at-bat and keep the bats hot for the Mountain Ridge Sentinels. He hits a chopper off the bounce, fielded cleanly by Atencio, who makes the throw over to first in time. I bring up Jackson Reiser. Reiser's had quite the week so far. He started off that first game as the Miners' worst nightmare, as he was booming shots all over the place for the Sentinels. In that one, Reiser was hit by a pitch in his first at-bat, but then, and speaking of being hit by a pitch, that's exactly what just happened to Reiser. So Reiser headed over to first. But going back to Reiser, in the first game against Bingham, hit by a pitch in his first at-bat, just as he was there, but then launched in a ball into left field to drive in a run, and then back-to-back home runs to close out the day for Reiser in Game 1 against the Bingham Miners. The first one, he blasted into left field to bring in a teammate and himself, and the second one, he had no teammate on base, but still crushed a home run into right field. So a combined 4 runs driven in that first game, part of the dominant performance we saw out of Mountain Ridge. Reiser didn't have quite as much success yesterday, but did have some crazy sequences where he struck out in his first plate appearance, grounded out to short, but in between both of those, on a fly ball that led to some confusion, he barely made it to diving second, and then on a ball he launched into left field. It was a close call as he made it to second on back-to-back plays. So it's been quite the eventful and productive week for Jackson Reiser so far in the batter's box. He's also done a strong job at center field. Easton Gunn owned the first base hit in the previous inning as he batted in the second. It's back up to and is up to bat once again in the third. Gunn was the first run of the day to score. Falls behind the count 0-2 after driving that one into foul territory. He ripped it into right field the last time we saw him. Looking to land on base again here and advance Reiser. I've already mentioned Reiser's speed a couple times. It wouldn't be surprising to see him try to go for and steal second. And back-to-back pitchers, Lindsey in his last few pitches has now hit back-to-back batters. That'll bring up Luke Nelson. Miners going to talk things over in the infield with 2 runners on and 1 out right here. Last time we saw Nelson, he launched one deep into left field and was able to get a double out of it. No one warming up in the bullpen for the Miners currently, as this game's still firmly in the hands of Porter Lindsay. 1-0 the count with 2 runners on. Reiser to second, Gunn at first. Both were put on base after being hit by a pitch from Lindsay. Pickoff attempt over to second, unsuccessful. Nelson in the first meeting between these two teams walked, flew out to first, and walked in his third at-bat, and then flew out to center field. Still just 1 out here, 1-0 the count. Make it 2-0 on the high delivery. Nelson thought about swinging at it, but decided to pull back. It was a good decision. Lindsay in danger of loading the bases up. First strike of the at-bat delivered. Lindsay steps off the mound just for a moment to look over and check Reiser, who's back on second. This ball launched into left field, just going to end up in foul territory as it hits the wall out in left field. 2-2 the count now. Lindsay able to fight his way back in the count. There's one out after Folks grounded out to short. 2 hits scored on 2 runs here early for Mountain Ridge. Nelson, who's on deck, came in on the wild pitch to score the first one. And then Edwards drove in a run earlier. This one popped straight up in the air. A little bit of confusion, but eventually calling for it and making the grab is Boston Snyder to retire Nelson. That'll bring up Remington Edwards. Last time we saw him, grounded out to first, but brought in the first run of the day. Actually, Nelson scored the second run of the day on the wild pitch, but Edwards brought in the first run of the day. Edwards struck out in his first plate appearance and his final one. Also flew out to right field. But he did blast one into right field in that first bout with the Miners for a ground rule double. 0-1 the count. 2 outs, 2 runners on base for the Sentinels. Edwards lets the outside delivery pass for the first ball. Looked like for a moment that Edwards thought he was hit by that delivery, but not the case as he showed toss in the bat, but then pulls back. 2 outs. Boston Snyder looking for a strike here to even the count at 2-2, currently behind 2-1. Three-1 the count. Edwards takes a hack, gets nothing, brings us to full count with 2 runners on base and 2 outs. Last time we saw Edwards, he drove in the first run of the day on the sacrifice single. Trying to keep the inning alive for the Sentinels, leading 2-0. Lindsay thought about the pickoff attempt, but instead will reset. Lindsay, as this one's launched into foul territory. So we'll do it the 3-2 pitch again. Edwards chops it directly to Lindsay, who controls it, gets it over to first, and gets the Miners out of it. They hold Mountain Ridge scoreless in the bottom of the third, forcing the Sentinels to leave 2 runners stranded on base. That will do it for the third. The 4th inning up next from UCCU Ballpark.
Okay. You ain't on my level, then shoot, I can't die. 같은 질투 더 높이 올라와 공기도 달라.
After 3 complete innings, 2-0 the difference in the bottom of the second when the Sentinels found a lot of offensive success. Dylan Frank due back up. Mentioned Frank in yesterday's game with that monster grand slam that he destroyed. Last time we saw him, he was retired on the drop 3 strikeout. What a start so far for Anderson Decker. He had 6 strikeouts, and he struck out the first 3 batters he faced and the last 3, and forced the other 3 to retire after putting the ball in play. 1-0 the count early. Gunn jogs up to the mound to talk things over with Decker about how they want to retire Frank once again. Mentioned Frank, already that home run. One powerful hit could change this game. Frank in the first go-around of the week that we saw between the Miners and Sentinels. Struck out in his first 2 plate appearances. Then a walk, but ripped a fly ball into right field. That allowed him to safely reach base. This one's fouled off. 2-1 the count. In that first game of the week between Mountain Ridge and Bingham, that was back on Monday. Mountain Ridge got off to a hot start, scored 2 runs in the bottom of the first, second, and then 5 in the bottom of the third. They were close to the mercy rule, but Bingham was able to add 2 runs in the top of the fourth and hold the Sentinels scoreless. Bingham and Mountain Ridge each add a run in the bottom of the first, and we'd be scoreless the rest of the way, equating to a 10-3 Sentinels victory over the Miners. Full count now. Frank struck out the last time we saw him. Looking to be the first Miner to get a hit on Anderson Decker. Frank walking over to first on the high delivery. First walk of the day surrendered by Anderson Decker. Bingham reached this game after being the 13th seed. They defeated Farmington 10-0, and then in a narrow 8-7 victory in the first regional. Then in the super regionals, they secured the big-time upset against Copper Hills. They won both those games 5-3 before falling to Mountain Ridge. Pickoff attempt down to first. They'll have a chance, but just safe as the diving Frank makes it back in time. Wallen, last time we saw him, struck out in the previous game against the Sentinels. Struck out his first plate appearance. Landed safely on a misplayed pop by the infield of the Sentinels. Then flew out to center field and grounded out to short on a chopper. 1-0 the count. He's facing early. No outs in the inning. The tying run at home plate now. Wallen takes a high ball 3. Anderson Decker so sharp early, trying to regain that form. Currently trailing 3-0 in the count with Max Peck, Cam Beck, and Abraham Atencio, some of the strongest hitters in the order, on deck for Bingham. And the outside delivery for 4 straight balls and 2 runners on base. Bingham may be trailing early and it was 3 up, 3 down through the first 3 innings, but the infield coming together to talk things over now for the Sentinels because of the prominent run we're seeing from the Bingham Miners to begin the top of the fourth. The winner of this game will go on to play the top-seeded Sky Ridge Falcons at 7 o'clock tonight. If the winner of this game is able to defeat Sky Ridge, there will be another game at 7 o'clock tomorrow. But if Sky Ridge claims victory, then they would eliminate whoever emerges from this game, and we would officially have our final game set. But before we get to that one, we do have a bout in last year's state championship rematch with the American Fork Cavemen and the Riverton Silverwolves taking each other on at 4:30 or 30 minutes after the conclusion of this one if this game runs long. Maddox Peck due up. 0-1 the count, still no outs in the inning. Decker delivers it. It's another ball to the outside. So he's now delivered 5 balls in his last 6 deliveries. Peck in that first game against the Sentinels struck out, flew out to right field, but 2 walks in his final at-bats. He was exceptional pitching yesterday, really shut down the offense for Pleasant Grove. That game ended up as 10-3, but honestly more like a 10-2 kind of performance after how strong the Miners defense was. Strike 2, Peck. Not a fan of that call. One, two the count as he exhales. Takes a couple practice swings. Gives home plate a tap. Peck looking to avoid a second consecutive strikeout. Anderson Decker looking for a K. He's got it. That is his 7th already. And we aren't even through 4 innings. That'll bring up Cam Beck. Beck popped out to short the last time we saw him. Beck in the first game. Flew out to center field, but had a very productive game against the Sentinels, as he also crushed a home run up center field and brought in another one of his teammates with him, and brought another run later in that game when he lifted a line drive into left field. So Beck and Reiser, I believe the only 2 players in our tournament with multiple home runs during bracket play, both in action here. On the count. Anderson Decker trying to make it remain this as a 2-0 game. High delivery. 0-2 the count. And 1-2 the count on the delivery. Decker close to back-to-back strikeouts. He accomplished the feat in the previous inning when he had 3 straight. He did so also in the first. Can he do it again here? High delivery evens the count at 2 apiece. Beck resets, looking to make a big play for Bingham. Decker looking to retire him on the upcoming delivery. Full count. Beck, full count. Grounds it, and it'll break through. Chance to score a run for the Miners. Going home is Frank, and was he tagged out? No, they'll say he missed the tag. Easton Gunn in disbelief at the catcher spot, trying to plead his case, saying that he did reach out and grab him. But our home plate umpire saw it differently, and now this is a 1-run game. Beck's booming shot brings in the first run of the day for the Miners. We'll see a meeting take place on the mound. No one warming up for the Sentinels, so they'll just be talking things over more than likely here as they try to figure out how they want to play this. The RBI single. Still just 1 out in the inning. Decker reached full count there with Beck, but Beck able to come up big for Bingham. That ball was blasted into right field. It was a close call. It was a great throw that time by Remington Edwards, who came in up from right field to field it cleanly and rifle that ball home. But in the end, the throw unable to get there just in time, and the tag out from Gunn just a split hair off. So for Beck, it turned into a double. Wallen was able to make it over to third in the process. And now with just one out and the tying run at third, Abraham Atencio now due up. Atencio, the last time we saw him on a bunt, was retired by the pitcher. Atencio in that first game as he let strike one fly past on a curve. Grounded out to third. Chopped out to third, and the second at bat was hit by a pitch. And then reached base safely after drilling a grounder to third and was safe off a fielder's choice. 2-0 the count. Decker winds, delivers. High for ball one. Atencio looking to bring in the tying run. That previous hit was the first one of the day. Count will go to 2-2 on another outside delivery. We'll have full count for the second straight at bat on the outside delivery that time. Still just one out. 2 runners in scoring position. Atencio swings and misses. It's another K for Decker. He's up to 8 strikeouts now through 14 batters faced. Talon Van Sickle due up again. Van Sickle was retired on first on a chopper that he drilled directly down the line last time we saw him. In the first game of this series, he reached base in his first 2 at-bats after booming grounders up the middle and to the left side, then was retired at second after he tried to make it there on stretch 1 into a double, and struck out in his final plate appearance. Behind the count 0-2. Decker looking for his 3rd inning in 4 in which he's used all strikeouts to retire the opposing batters. And Decker, they're going to check and say he did not go. As we had saw, Gunn had already started to head in because he thought that was going to be strike 3. But instead, it'll be ball 1. And a good decision to check the swing that time by Talon Van Sickle, trying to reach base for the first time in this one. And this time, just a delivery later, Van Sickle goes down swinging. Another strikeout. And it's the 9th of the game through just 4 innings for Anderson Decker. Top of the 4th is done for, but we're moving into the bottom, and it's up next. Our game remains 2-1 after Anderson Decker did surrender a run, but was able to get a huge strikeout on Talon Van Sickle. He's got 9 already through just 4 innings. Mentioned the pitching we saw in that first game between Marks and Ball. As we have a coach running out into the outfield. Not entirely sure what happened there, as Peck appears a little shaken up at the moment. Not really sure what the situation was there. So they're taking a look at his foot as he walks back in for the Sentinels. It'll be Austin Ellis, Dylan Singleton, and Braxton Miller all due up. Peck trying to run it off. As I said, I was looking down to check my notes, so not entirely sure what happened to Peck. Some clutch pitching in the previous inning. As I mentioned, his Could be seeing Peck taken care of in a moment as the Miners look to make a call on what to do. So he's still trying to walk it off. Might have just turned his ankle or something while he headed out there. As I said, not entirely sure what the issue was. But lost in the numerous strikeouts we've now seen from Anderson Decker was the fact that Bingham left 2 runners on in scoring position. And because of this is still a 1-0 lead. Or excuse me, a 1-run lead. As it's 2-1 currently for Mountain Ridge. Austin Ellis, Dylan Singleton, and Braxton Miller all due up. As Peck forced to head in. So Dylan Frank will shift over to center field. Because of the location of how far some of the outfielders are, I wasn't able to see all of the shifts, but at the moment, Dylan Frank in the outfield. We'll hope that Peck is okay and update you if we see him return in the game. 4th inning in the bottom portion, set to begin. Aurelian, I believe now in right field. Or excuse me, I believe left field. "2-0 the count. Sentinels looking to extend their lead. They trail by just 1 at the moment. That'll go to 2-1 after the foul off by Ellis. Ellis in the previous game between these two teams launched one into left field. Walked in his first plate appearance, then struck out and flew out into right field, or excuse me, left field. Make it more left center field, we'll call it. 2-2 the count. Porter Lindsay gets the K on Ellis. That's his 2nd of the day. I'll bring up Dylan Singleton, who walked to load the bases up the last time we saw him. There are bodies warming up now in the bullpen for Bingham. Singleton fouls it back into the net. Singleton in the first action between these two teams grounded out to second. Then brought in a run on a ball he rocked into shallow left field. And then a walk in his final plate appearance. He fouls another one off, so he'll be 1-2 in the count in a moment. One the count. Singleton takes a low ball 2. So the count now 2-1. Or excuse me, 1-2 the delivery was originally correct as they switched the board in the outfield. And strike 3. Back-to-back Ks for Porter Lindsay, who's looking confident on the mound for the Miners. It'll bring up Braxton Miller. So we've just crossed over an hour in now. And 1 out away from being 4 innings deep into this one. The Sentinels scored 2. The Miners added 1 in the top of the first. 3 strikeouts now in the game for Porter Lindsay as he facing off against Braxton Miller. The first strikeout he had was against Braxton Miller. We mentioned Miller's monster day yesterday. Looking to make a play for his team here. Just up by 1, trying to keep the 4th alive. He chops this one into foul territory for the first ball. Ellison Singleton retired on back-to-back strikeouts. Two on the count. Miller wisely takes ball 3. Lindsay ends up walking Miller. So I'll bring up Austin Goodrich. Goodrich has had quite the week. He walked in 3 of his 4 at-bats last night, grounding out to second in the other. And in the first game, he faced off against the Bingham Miners. He had a walk, also rocketed one in the left field to bring in a run, a strikeout, and then grounded out to second. One runner on, 2 outs. Goodrich in this game flew out to left field the first time we saw him and grounded out to second in his previous at-bat. 0-1 the count as he drills a grounder. It deflects off the glove of Van Sickle. Miller going into third and able to make it safely. Oh, and then trying to stretch into a double and getting caught up in a pickle as having an opportunity to go home and sliding in safely across home before being tagged out. That time was Miller. So they're going to count Miller's run as it scored before the tag out. So we move into the 5th. It's now a 3-1 advantage. We are 4 innings deep into this one and off some crazy chaos. It is a 3-1 ball game now. Low delivery in the dirt for ball 1. Decker with 9 strikeouts already today. He's due up to face Bridger Slade, Blake Schaefer, and Boston Snyder for the second time. Last time he battled with them, he struck them out. All 3 of them. Slade thought about swinging, but check the delivery. 3-0 the count. Slade, last time we saw him, struck out. In the previous game, had 2 walks and a base hit when he faced off against the Sentinels. 3-1 the current count. Bingham trailing by 2 once again. And strike number 2, so full count. Slade turned. He thought he was heading over to first, but instead we'll have a full count delivery. And the bat flip from Slade as he's officially walking over. Second walk of the day, surrendered by Anderson Decker. We'll have Blake Schaefer due up. Looks like they're going to try to send a pinch runner out in place of Slade, the designated hitter. Just unable to see the number of who they deployed out there. So 1 runner on, no outs. The tying run up to home plate. Cooper Schott is the pinch runner in for Slade. Slow rolling bunt, stays fair, and Schott advances to second, but Schaefer retired. So 1 out now. 3-1 the differential. And now due up is Boston Snyder, and then it'll be Dylan Frank batting for the third time on deck. Snyder, the last time we saw him the last time we saw him in his game against the Sentinels, flew out to right field in both plate appearances, and the strikeout. Miners now have taken 3 of the 4 games these teams have played each other on the season. Sentinels now taken 3 of the 4 games these teams have played on the season. But Bingham looking to take the biggest one yet. The loser of this one going home. The winner takes on Skyridge later tonight. 1-0 the count. Snyder fouls it off. Count goes to 0-2 now. Snyder drills a grounder that squeezes past second and third, bringing a run home and successfully sliding home. The tag out won't go, so it's once again a 1-run game. So 3-2 the score off Snyder's huge single in the RBI fashion. So that was Cooper Shute, who was able to come in and score. So 3-2 the score. Dylan Frank due up. A walk in his previous at-bat, and then was retired on the drop 3 strikeout. 1 out in the inning. And a pinch runner took over on first for Snyder. Pinch runner. It's going to just Blake. Not entirely sure who the pinch runner is actually. My roster, I believe, might be incorrect. So 1-0 the count. So 2 balls here early. Decker now giving up a run in each of the previous innings. This chopper will be fair. A throw over to first on time, and then trying to head over to third, and being able to do so successfully as no one had rotated over to cover up. For that was Stockton Folks, who left third base. So Folks came off to cover third, and no one was over there, so just smart base running that time by the Miners. As with no one over there, they're able to steal third. So now the tying run over on third. Two outs now after Frank was retired on the grounder. Jake Wallen now in great position to drive in a run. That one nearly squeezes past, but Gunn able to trap it. 2 outs in the inning. 1-0 the count. Wallen thought about swinging on it, but pulled back. $2-0 the difference early. Make it 3-0 on the ball delivery there. Couple pitchers currently warming up for American Fork. Anderson Decker with 9 strikeouts. He's been dominant for so much today, but struggling a little bit now. He's able to find the zone there for strike 1. Wallen currently batting, and Peck on deck, so appears okay after being shaken up earlier. And the high delivery for the ball. We'll see a meeting on the mound taking place. Anderson Decker struggling a little at the moment, as I mentioned. Started his day out with 6 strikeouts in his first 9 batters faced. Has now walked 4 batters. 4 of the previous 11 batters he's now faced. It's a 1-run advantage for Mountain Ridge, but Bingham nipping at their heels here with 2 runners on base and 2 outs in the top of the 5th. A reminder, our first semifinals game of the day will be due up at 4:30, and it'll be a rematch of last year's state championship game. American Fork and Riverton, the 6 and 7 seeds, battling it out here at UCCU Ballpark. Then our nightcap at 7 o'clock will feature the winner of this game. We're just about set to resume action. Anderson Decker still in. In this 3-2 contest. Decker trying to get the Sentinels out of it, having only given up a run. Peck, 2 strikeouts in his previous 2 plate appearances, the only one to be strucken out in back-to-back plate appearances, trying to avoid doing so here. It would be Anderson Decker's 10th K of the day and allow his team to get out of the inning and maintain a 3-2 lead. The tying run on third. Oh, they're going to try the pickoff attempt at second. That's not, they'll have a chance at it, but either way, it scored a run. So they get the second out, but the same situation that we already saw play out with the run is going to count. So we are going to have a tie game, 3-3. Coming up the bottom of the 5th, the action continues to heat up. Stay with us on KSL Sports Rewind. We're set for more action in the bottom of the 5th in this tie 3-3 game. Maddox Peck was due up a moment ago. Yes. There's a little bit of score confusion, but we had it correct here on the board. So the 3-3 game. Official here. 2 runs scored in the top of the 5th for Bingham. Max Peck will be due back up in a moment. But Stockton, Folks, Jackson Reiser, and Eastern Gunn all due up here. This one sails in foul territory for strike 1. Folks grounds one. It's fielded cleanly by Jake Wallen, who gets it over to first to retire Folks for the 3rd time today. Jackson Reiser will be due up in a moment, but while we have a second, let's recap some of the crazy scoring we've now seen in a couple of these instances. As we recap some of this crazy scoring. What happened was Jake Wallen was over on first, and then Wallen was able to make it over as this ball launched deep into center field and recovered by the center fielder, the new center fielder, in Frank, who shifted over from left field. So 2 outs now in the inning. Miners' defense is really rounded into form here, as Reiser was retired quickly. Easton Gunn now due up. Last time we saw him was hit by a pitch. Before that, had the first base hit of the day. Booming one into right field for a base hit. But as I mentioned, explaining what just happened in the previous one. So while Peck was up to bat, we had Wallen try to steal second. He got caught in the middle, and because he was caught, the Miners' pinch runner was able to come home and score before the tag out. And because of that, it's now a 3-3 game. We had Mountain Ridge score a run in the bottom of the 4th in a very similar fashion, in which Goodrich was caught in a pickle, but allowed Miller to make it home right before the inning ended. So 3-3, the tie game between these 2 Region 3 foes. 1-1 the count, facing Easton gun. A low swing and miss that time. Porter Lindsay was in danger of being pulled earlier, but now, with the count at 1-2, a chance to get his 4th strikeout of the day and his team out of the 5th. Lindsay delivers it inside to even the count at 2. Ground ball, fielded, bobbled for a moment. Anacito, can the throw get over in time? They'll say it did. Wow. And it looked like, to me, that gun had beaten the throw. But that not the case. And, I mean, you can see right away, not surprisingly, we're going to see Coach Whitney making his way over. I thought that the slide was safe on first, just from my angle, but they had a little bit of a closer look at it. And, look, everyone's shifting around. I don't expect this to turn around, but on the odd chance it does, we'll bring you back the action, but either way, we should be heading into the 6th. Tied at 3. Miners and Sentinels battling it out. Stay with us on KSL Sports Rewind. We only have one semifinal spot left up for grabs, and we're tied with 2 innings to go between Mountain Ridge and Bingham. It's the 5th meeting of the season between these 2 teams, and it figures to be a great season. Mountain Ridge in just their program's 4th season. Bingham led by head coach Joey Soto, 31 years of experience, trying to reach it. After Syracuse was bounced earlier today by Riverton, the Miners are highest remaining seed at 13, but an opportunity to beat the 5th-seeded Sentinels and reach the championship game. Both sides down to their final 6 outs in regulation. Maddox Peck was originally going to be up, but instead it'll be a pinch hitter for Peck. And it's going to be Jared Aurelian. Oh, 1 the count. Aurelian falls to 0-2 in the count. Sentinels defense has been sharp for most of the game. In the first 3 innings, they held Bingham scoreless, but 3 runs scored in the previous 2 innings. Aurelian fouls it back into the net. Aurelian, the sophomore, 5'8", 125. Looking to step in and make a big play at the plate, trying to break the tie. Decker looking for his 10th strikeout. Instead, the count goes to 1-2. Fouled back into the net. One, two, the count. Decker forces Aurelian to foul off another one. Aurelian swings and misses, so 10 Ks on the day for Anderson Decker. He struck out the Maddox Peck, who was the previous 3 batter for the Miners, and that time takes care of Aurelian. 1 out in the inning. Beck, last time we saw him, boomed one into right field to drive in a run for the Miners. In his previous appearance before that, popped out short. 0-1 in the count after fouling that one off. Anderson loses control a little there. Delivers ball one. And another low delivery. One, two the count. Beck trying to avoid the strikeout. He rips a ground ball. It's fielded cleanly by Miller. Miller, the long throw over to first, makes it in time. Singleton taps the bag with his foot on it and retires Beck, who was giving it everything he's got on the run, trying to reach it. Then I'll bring up Abraham. Atencio, excuse me. Struck out the last time we saw him. Before that, bunted out to the pitcher. 2 outs now. Bingham in danger of going scoreless for the first time in a while here. This ball's launched into left field and it'll land in shallow left field, so that is a base hit. So Atencio on first. We'll say, I actually believe in the previous inning, we did have a pitching change. It's actually Grayson Riding who's on the mound now, so credit him with the previous strikeout and the hit he just surrendered to Atencio. This one's fouled off into the net. So a new pitcher on the mound for the Miners as they made the change. Anderson Decker was struggling a little bit in the previous inning, but still able to get his team out of it. So the leading run on first. 2 outs, 0-1 the count. This ball's launched into left field, foul territory. Grayson Riding, the sophomore, 6'1", 180. We've seen a pinch run a couple times this week too. But trying to come in late and help guide the Sentinels to a victory. The chopper fielded cleanly. And they'll make the throw over to first. So Riding with his short first stint on the mound as the Sentinels defense looks strong. They're trying to bat for potentially the final time when we come back. Bottom of the 6th up next on KSL Sports Rewind. Still tied at 3 in the bottom of the 6th here. Porter Lindsay still on the mound. Luke Nelson, Remington Edwards, and Austin Ellis all due up for the 3rd time. Both sides desperate to break the tie and punch their ticket into the semifinals. Both teams would have their work cut out for them, as they would have to beat Skyridge twice, once tonight and then once tomorrow. And if they lose just once, they're eliminated. Back-to-back strikes after the foul off and that delivery from Lindsay. He was in danger of surrendering his job earlier, but has looked sharp since returning to the mound. This ball's lifted into left field. A little late on it that time. Nelson, his first plate appearance, crushed one into left field. Scored the first of 2, was brought in by Edwards, RBI. After that launching hit, Nelson himself boomed a double. Or Nelson came in off a steal, excuse me, after Gunn reached base. Then was retired at first via the catcher. Count remains at 0-2. Lindsay has seemed to just get stronger as this game is wore on. The 13th seeded Miners looking for just their 2nd victory in 5 tries on the season against the Sentinels. They took the first game at Mountain Ridge and haven't won one since against their Region 3 foe. 1-2 the count after that one comes across home in the dirt. Count even at 2 after that low delivery. Lindsay looking to close this one out for Bingham. He's hoping he has to pitch 2 more times if he was to surrender a run. It could be different. All it takes is one big hit. And now 3 straight balls delivered by Lindsay. He was so close to the strikeout quickly, but Nelson's been able to fight his way back in the count. Nelson Fouls it off into right field. It just ends up in the dirt next to the bullpen. We'll reset and do the full count delivery again. Both these teams desperate to keep their seasons alive. Nelson knocks one into left field, and it'll take a bounce. It'll be a base hit for Luke Nelson, his second of the game on the low-hanging line drive. Or the high-hanging line drive, you can say fly ball. So that'll bring up Remington Edwards after the base hit from Nelson. Landed in shallow center left field. So the tying run on first, no outs. This bunt unsuccessful. Edwards drove in a run in his first plate appearance after ripping one into right field to bring in Gunn. Also put Nelson in scoring position on third, excuse me. Then he retired out to the pitcher, leaving 2 on the last time we saw him. Trying to talk things over. Right now with Coach. So Coach Whitney discussing things with Edwards. 0-1 the count. Porter Lindsay will reset. Lindsay, the senior right-hander, has delivered the last few innings, looking to do so again. But first, a pickoff attempt, unsuccessful over to first. And another outside delivery that time. 1-1 the count. One and one the count. Edwards trying to make sure the Sentinels don't have to bat again, barring they could close it out defensively if they score a run here. Edwards, that one stays fair. Low hang ball, long throw all the way over to first, and safe is the speedy Edwards. Whalen had to dive to collect it off the bounce. There was a long throw across his body, and he was unable to make it in time. 2 runners on base now, no outs. Austin Ellis now due up, struck out the last time we saw the designated hitter, and before that was hit by a pitch. Nelson to second, Edwards on first. Ellis shows bunt, and it rolls into foul territory. He was frustrated. He really liked the placement of it, as he knew he would have been safe on base. Ellis has had at least 1 base hit in each of the previous games. Has walked once in each of the games as well. So I am not entirely sure what just happened from my vantage point up in the booth, but that was the first out charged against Ellis. I don't know if he stepped out of the box, what exactly did. You could tell Ellis was frustrated, but he seemed a little more frustrated than normal off the bunt attempt. But either way, he's retired. So the DH done for, the first out in the bottom of the 6th. Dylan Singleton now due up. Singleton's due for a big hit. Walked in his first plate appearance. Also a strikeout. This one skied into center field. Back on it and collecting it is Frank. but the tag up opportunity. So with 2 outs now, a run on third. So the speedy Nelson to third, Edwards still stuck on first, with Braxton Miller, who was arguably robbed of a home run last night. An opportunity to play hero and put the Miners in strong position to punch their ticket to the semifinals. Goodrich on deck if they can reach him. Lindsay looking to retire Miller. Go try for a pickoff at first. It's unsuccessful. A potential base hit to bring in what could be the game-winning run, depending on the defensive performance we see from the Sentinels in the top of the 7th. Outside delivery for ball 1. A swing and a miss from Miller evens the count at 1-1. Mentioned Miller with the big game last night on the ground rule double. The drop 3 strikeout was more luck than anything he did in particular when he reached safely on first via the air. Only 1 error in this game so far, cleanly played. That air charged against Bingham. 1-1 the count with 2 base runners on. Strike 2 comes through. The first matchup between these two teams was a 10-3 Mountain Ridge rout of the Miners. This one tied at 3. The leading run on third. The 1-2 delivery. And we'll see almost an opportunity for a tag out. Instead, that ball squeezes away. Lindsay, it lost control of it on the throw. And it's going to allow a run to score. Disaster strikes the Miners. What happened was... Wow, what a crazy sequence. I need a second to collect myself even after it. So you had Edwards, who was on first, decided to head over, as Mountain Ridge now leads it 4-3. So Edwards headed over. He was basically at second by the time Lindsay had turned around. And when he did, he turned there. But then I think the internal clock in his brain was like, oh, I need to look over to third. And he saw that leaking off a little bit on third was Nelson. So he tried to make the throw over, but it was in the dirt and escaped Jake Wallen. So... because it escaped, it allowed Nelson to score, and Edwards was able to make it over from second to third. So another runner in scoring position firmly here. 1-2 the count still for Miller. We've had a lot of chaos in stolen bases. It's the third run score because of kind of errors and just during the kind of the dead period of action. 1-2 the count. This one fouled back. So still 2-1. Or excuse me, 1-2 the count. Edwards on third. 4-3 the current lead for the 5th-seeded Sentinels. This one lifted in right field. It hangs in the air and ends up bouncing in foul territory. Still 2 outs. Second time today Nelson has come in. The first one was on a wild pitch, and that one just on the poor throw from Lindsay in the dirt. Lindsay's been so strong today. I'm sure he'd love to have that one back. The Miners will need to score at least a run to keep this one going, although they still need to get the last strikeout as Miller's been able to fight his way back to a 2-2 count. Swing and a miss for Miller. Second time he's struck out today, but the damage is done. The Sentinels lead it 4-3, entering the 7th. Bingham needs to score at least 1 if they want to keep it going. Can they do it? Stay with us on KSL Sports Rewind to find out. The Miners down to their final 3 outs as they'll be looking to make a play in a moment. So Luke Nelson was located on third, while Remington Edwards was on first, and Edwards tried to just steal second, and it was, well, Lindsay had the ball. He hadn't even turned around. They were trying to draw the same situation that had worked for them earlier in the game, or excuse me, the same situation that had worked for the Miners to find success. The Sentinels decided to try to take a page out of their book and go back to it after they scored a run off a similar play in the fourth. And because of the pickle that ensued, there was no pickle the second time around, but because Lindsey turned around and already saw that Edwards was safe on second, he thought he could make a throw over quick because he saw how far off the bag Nelson was leaking, but the throw was off target and allowed Nelson to score. Now Mountain Ridge did leave a runner stranded on third in Edwards, but the Miners down to their final 3 outs, currently trailing 4-3 in the top of the 7th. Grayson Riding still on the mound for the Sentinels. Facing off against Bridger Slade, Blake Schaefer, and Boston Snyder. On the day, those 3 batters have combined for just 1 hit and 1 walk. The back of the order going to try to step up here and make a play to keep the 13th-seeded Miners alive, battling the 5th-seeded Sentinels. Slade, in his previous plate appearance, walked. Before that, struck out. He's currently ahead in the count, 2-1. Coach Whitney and the Sentinels close to reaching the semis. Just the 4th year of their program's existence. I'm sure many of these players were on that early team too. Taking beatdowns over the years and now have an opportunity to face Skyridge again. 2-2 the count after the foul off. Full count on the outside delivery. Riding. Looking for his second K of the game, if he can capture it here. Instead, it's fouled off by Slade, fighting to stay alive. Slade walking over to first. He's fired up. Nobody's in the bullpen for Mountain Ridge. The game currently in the hands of Riding. So Slade over on first. Looks like they're going to roll with him and not turn to a pinch runner. Well, they actually will turn to a pinch runner. Coach Soto just wanted to talk things over. So the pinch runner for Bingham going over to first is going to be number 18, Jackson Sissom. So Sissom to first represents the tying run needed to extend this game. We're going to have a pinch hitter coming up. So instead of Blake Schaefer, it's going to be Dylan, or excuse me, that's the Mountain Ridge roster getting turned around here. It's going to be Bauer Williams. Williams looking to make a play. Williams ahead in the count, 1-0. With Sissom on first. 2-0 the count. Riding and Gunn had a quick discussion on the mound. Only one team can advance. Miners looking to force Mountain Ridge to have to bat as they're trying to extend it. Schaefer in this spot before, a strikeout, and then a bunt unsuccessfully. 3-1 the count. Or excuse me, 2-1 the count. Williams, the sophomore, 5'8", 150. One of the biggest bats of his life. Williams shows bunt, places it. It's fielded for a moment. The throw over is on target. They get the out at first. Grayson Riding steps off the mound and gets it over in time to retire Williams, but Sissom makes it over to second. Now due up, we're going to have what looks to be another pinch hitter, as we could see a meeting on the mound take place before. Or will actually be Boston Snyder. Check that. So Boston Snyder. Due up in a moment. Snyder's day so far. Struck out in his previous plate appearance. But after that, rocketed one in a right field to bring in what was the last run. That being in the top of the 5th for the Miners. Bingham down to their final 2 outs, but they got a runner on second. So it'll be Snyder due up in a moment with Frank on deck. Frank with 2 home runs in his previous 2 games. Could completely change this game if he was able to get a hold of one. But they need to get him up to bat first. And Snyder looking to bring Jackson System closer. Riding, trying to close it out for his team and punch their ticket into the semis. System at second. 1 out. Snyder. Skies one into left field and sprinting to make the grab. Wow, what a play by Austin Goodrich. He made that look a lot easier than it was. Goodrich gets out number 2. What a play by the left fielder. So 2 outs now. System still on second. And it all comes down to Dylan Frank. Sentinels can win it with an out and punch their ticket into tonight's semifinal game versus the Sky Ridge Falcons. Frank, last time we saw him, grounded out to first. A walk, then was retired on the drop 3 strikeout. Hasn't been his game yet, but that could all change here. A low delivery by Riding. One 1-0 the count with 2 outs. Trying to bring in System to extend it, who's still settled on second. Frank steps back in, taps home plate, resets. Frank takes a hack, gets nothing. 1-1 in the count now. Frank awaits the delivery from Riding. He lifts it into center field, making the diving grab to win it for the Sentinels in center field. Jackson Reiser gets it done. Mountain Ridge is moving on. What a diving grab from Rising. Sports Center top 10 tight play sends the Sentinels on to face Sky Ridge for the second time in our tournament. It was a good hit by Frank. Nearly dropped in shallow center field, but the speed of Jackson Reiser, as he's able to get under it and end it. So that is our final. Mountain Ridge claims their 4th victory of the season against their Region 3 foe, the Bingham Miners. The Miners season is over. Shout out to head coach Joey Soto and his squad. A strong run. They were able to knock off Pleasant Grove yesterday, made it far in bracket play, but just couldn't topple the Sentinels in this one. As Mountain Ridge able to advance, Grayson Riding got it done late after Anderson Decker got off to a blazing hot start on the mound. And the big time play at the bats for the Miners. As we saw the base running from Luke Nelson score 2 huge runs, Remington Edwards with some big hits too. Big time performance by Mountain Ridge. They have a chance to go to the state championship now, and it starts with the opportunity to play Sky Ridge tonight, 7 o'clock. But before we do that, we have our first semifinals matchup on deck. as Riverton is set to take on American Fork in a rematch of last year's state championship game. That one will get underway at 4:30. We'll see you then on KSL Sports Rewind. But your final here, the Mountain Ridge Sentinels take it over the Bingham Miners 4-3.